With the surge of expensive eggs flooding the market, many of us are left wondering, are these pricey options really worth it? So let's get cracking. Now, number one we have to look at is the chicken space. When we look at a carton of eggs, we typically see the terms cage-free, free-range, and pasture-raised. But what does that really mean? Well, it's referring to the amount of space the chicken has to live in. Chickens in cages don't even get a full square foot of space. This setup leads to high levels of stress and cortisol in the chicken. The impact on eggs means higher cortisol means poor egg quality, nutritionally, and in flavor. How about cage-free chickens? That sounds good. Don't be fooled by the label. While cage-free might sound promising, it's only marginally better. These chickens typically only also get 1 square foot per bird. Believe it or not, I have a good friend who used to be a big chicken farmer. They have 100,000 chickens in a warehouse. There aren't any cages, but they're packed together so close they might as well be. So their stress levels are still high, and the nutritional quality of the egg remains compromised. Okay, well, how about free-range chicken? A step up, but still limited. They get about 2 by 2 feet of space, but the free-range chickens can be kept in the warehouse their entire lives, as long as a door to the outside is open for 5 minutes every 24 hours, and the chicken has the potential to visit outside. No chicken in their right mind would stick their head out thinking a hawk is about to eat them. Okay, how about pasture-raised chicken? So pasture-raised chicken get about 10 by 10 feet per bird, allowing them to forage, peck, and move freely. Hence, lower stress equals a healthier, higher quality egg. But wait, almost all pastured chickens are given additional feed because they can't actually get enough feed from pecking around in the grass anymore. And bad news, most of the time grass is not growing 365 days a year. So the farmers actually have to give their chickens supplemental food. So you gotta know not only where your eggs came from, you gotta know the farmer. One of the best ways is to go to a farmer's market, find out how they raise their chickens, but equally as important, find out what they're feeding their chickens. So for instance, even though this says pasture-raised and small family farms, there's nothing on here to describe what they're actually giving their chickens to eat. We have a lady at the Santa Barbara's Farmers Market that I went up to a couple years ago, and I said, what do you feed your chickens? And she looked at me and she said, I don't feed them anything. They work for me. And I said, what does that mean? She said, they're farm animals. They work for me. She said, you should come back in October and November when I turn them loose in our persimmon tree farm. They have the most intense orange egg yolk you will ever see. Speaking of which, believe it or not, it's perfectly acceptable to feed chickens colorful things, like for instance, turmeric or marigolds, to give their egg yolk a darker orange color. Now, there's nothing illegal about that. And quite frankly, marigolds are really good for you, and I like to sprinkle marigold flowers on my salads. Also, egg labels ignore natural and grade levels. They mean nothing in terms of quality. Ignore the color of the egg, a white egg, a brown egg, a green egg, a blue egg. They really don't mean anything. But look for pasture-raised. Here's several. Now, organic. Organic doesn't mean that the chicken was eating organically, except for a few important issues. If it says organic, that means the grower was controlling the feed. And it usually means they're feeding them organic corn, or organic soybeans, or organic other grains. So just because it says organic, don't be fooled. All right, so let's do a little color test. first of all, I have no commercial interest with any of these folks. I have a really heartfelt interest in one of these that we'll talk about, but here's Eggland's Best. You see that advertised on TV all the time. It's usually got a cute little EB on the end of it. And one of the things they do with these chickens is they feed them flaxseed and or algae to up their level of omega-3. Now, they don't make long-chain omega-3, they make short-chain omega-3. And you'll notice that's a pretty nice-looking yolk. This is one of the better options, particularly for my patients where money is an object. And quite frankly, money is usually an object. So, interestingly, there is another company that I don't have here today that feeds their chickens algae and seaweed. And the problem is they have to balance the amount of algae and seaweed or their shell becomes so thin that they crack all the time. Interestingly enough, I have a new patient from Nebraska who has their own farm, and they've been desperately trying to get their chickens to lay eggs by giving them algae and other cruciferous vegetables, and darn it, they won't lay eggs. And I told them this experience, and they said, well, that explains it. All right, so how about a pastured egg? And just remember, this didn't tell us what they were actually feeding their egg. Now, one thing I noticed right away, these eggs have a much tougher shell. And this is now coming up to mid-November, and you'll notice that this yolk looks spectacularly orange. But there's very few pastures ready for eating for chickens out in pastures where there are any bugs. So more than likely, this color egg at this time of year, they've added something in their diet to make this yolk really orange. Now, in general, when I'm over in particularly Italy, this is not even as intense as what I see in Italy, and I can guarantee you they're not feeding their chickens anything out in Tuscany. They're working for a living. Finally, here's pastured steps. Now, this is from Farmer Dan at lectinlightchicken.com. Farmer Dan is happy to tell you that it's soy-free and corn-free. And in fact, it is lectin light. Farmer Dan is so committed to lectin light chicken that he actually designed his own feed so that even though these chickens are completely pasture-raised, when they have to eat something, oh, I broke the yolk, oh well. They are fed lectin-free food. So he goes above and beyond. Now, he does not supplement these chickens' diet, and he's disappointed that in the winter, his yolk is not as orangey as it is in the summer. But he's controlling every part of what these chickens eat. And he's actually got a waiting list of, I think, 6 months to get eggs. So, color of the egg, yes, in general, the darker the yolk, the better the feed. But in the winter, be cautious that this phenomenal color isn't necessarily from the bugs and things they're eating. But look for the ingredients. Please, at the very least, look for soy-free and corn-free, and you'll typically get a much better egg. So in the end, if you can find omega-3 eggs for close to the price of regular eggs, please buy them. If not, try to look for soy-free or corn-free. Please don't be fooled by cage-free and free-range. And if you're going to spend the money for pasture-raised, go to the website of the person you're buying from and find out what the feed they're using. And I have a number of my patients that bug these producers, haha, no pun intended, about send me your ingredient list. And they're often shocked to find out what there's actually being fed to their pastured chicken. More amazing episodes just like this one. Watch now.
You really want to go past the fresh goat cheese logs, which are not fermented, and instead look for goat cheeses, feta cheeses that actually say the ingredient is goat.